But ladies and gentlemen, I want to go or take you through blow by blow the complaints that were filed against these commissioners one by one and what the committee found in each of their cases. So I'll start with Amadou Sule. This is Amadou Sule. The allegation was that political party primaries were treated as a private commercial project by the deputy chairperson, with funds paid directly into the personal accounts of key staff for the functions to be performed for party primaries. In other words, that political parties paid money to the Electoral Commission for the conduct of their political party primaries, and that these monies, instead of being lodged in EC accounts, this Chief of Staff Committee, Chief Justice Committee, found that these monies were lodged in the personal accounts of individual members of the commission. After witness statements from the chairperson herself against Amadou Sule, the EC Director of Finance, Joseph Kwekwa Samoa, the Director of Elections of the NDC Party, Samuel Ofosu Ampofu, among others, and the respondent, Amadou Sule himself, the committee established that, quote, the NDC paid over 5 million cedis in cash for their primaries to the EC, and the MPP paid 233,000, 270,000, and also 276,600 cedis for its presidential and parliamentary primaries, respectively. And that as the Deputy Commissioner in charge of operations, Alhaji Sule, quote, has the oversight responsibility for the Electoral Services Department and directly supervises the operations of the said department, unquote. But that Alhaji Sule, quote, defied all the known prudential financial administration practices and took over 5 million cedis in cash and kept same in the custody of individuals, unquote. The committee found that, quote, he allowed over 6 million cedis received on behalf of the commission to be handled in a manner that decries any reasonable prudent accounting principles, leaving room for fraud and misapplication of the money, unquote. Though in the midst of investigations of how the money was managed, the commission opened an account for internally generated funds in December 2015, the deputy head of the Electoral Services claimed it was deposited with the chief accountant for, quote, safekeeping. The Electoral Services Department indeed treated the political party's primary as a private project. The millions of cedis received for the purpose on behalf of the commission were handled in a manner that threw all known financial mismanagement principles, all sound financial management principles in any institution to the wind, and that, quote, there was gross financial management which opened the commission to fraud and misappropriation of money, unquote. Also, quote, election materials belonging to the commission could not be accounted for, since no proper records were kept as to how these items were procured from the commission's stores, unquote. The committee held that Alhaji Sule demonstrated that, quote, he lacks the skill and ability to perform his duties as the head and supervisor of the commission's operations, unquote. The committee held that at least an amount of 320,822 cedis remained unaccounted for the consumables used for the primaries of political parties in 2015, and that up to date, the remaining 360,000 has still not been paid into the EC's account created in 2015 for that purpose, which they allege is still with the chief accountant for safekeeping. The other allegation that the committee investigated was that the deputy chairperson in charge of operations had persistently instructed officials to carry out illegal vote transfers on the voter management system in clear breach of the law and operational policies of the Commission. Documentary evidence produced by the representatives of STL, the contractor in charge of the EC Electoral Register database, showed this. Chairperson Charlotte Osei, who gave evidence against Amadou Sule at this Chief Justice Committee, said that when she heard that the STL was effecting illegal transfers, she asked them to stop. She says that she received this evidence through email from STL of voter transfers done through the VMLs by STL between January 1st, 2014 and 3rd and 4th September 2015. So from January 21st, 2014 to September 2015, Amadou Sule was carrying out illegal vote transfers on the system at the blind side of everybody else in the Commission. When she confronted STL why they were doing so against the laid down procedures, the contractor said that all the transfers were authorized. Showed, quote, scanned copies of WhatsApp instructions from Amadou Sule to STL. There were 17 such exhibits before the committee, with a list of people to be transferred, handwritten notes bearing Alhaji Sule's signature. Though he denied them, the committee found that he wrote and signed them and that the WhatsApp messages were indeed from his cell phone. The committee found him culpable of misbehavior, as his conduct was held to amount to, quote, abuse of office. It therefore recommended that the respondent, Amadou Sule, be removed from office as a deputy commissioner of the Electoral Commission for incompetency and misbehavior, unquote. He was also asked to refund the amount of 320,822 cedis, which was found to be lost to the EC under his watch. The committee also recommended that the chief accountant, Kweku Owusu Ejelabi, be made to pay to the commission the amount of 360,000, which he claimed was still in his custody for safekeeping, failing which he should be charged with the offense of stealing, unquote. That is for Amadou Sule. Now, Georgina Opoku Amankwa, the same petitioner against Amadou Sule filed against the EC deputy chairperson in charge of corporate affairs. The committee focused on 4 allegations. She signed 2 contracts with Superlock Technologies on 6 May 2015 for $24,397,000 and $60,509,500 respectively, without adhering to the provisions of the Procurement Act. Under her watch, EC Staff Endowment Fund contributions for 8 months between 2013 and 2014 were not paid into the Staff Provident Fund at a time when she was deputy chairperson in charge of finance and administration and had direct supervision over the fund. On the STL contracts, the committee held gross incompetence and misconduct in executing the 2 contracts. 1, by her failure to seek prior authorization from the Public Procurement Authority. In other words, these contracts that she signed, over $24 million in one instance and over $16 million in another instance, were done absolutely on her own without recourse to the Public Procurement Authority. Number 2, by concealing the fact that she had already signed the contracts when she instructed the Director of Finance to write to the PPA for authorization. In other words, after she had signed the contracts, she then wrote to PPA seeking authorization for a contract she has already executed. Number 3, having discovered the illegal act, she did not withdraw the contract and persisted with it, damning the consequences that it would have on the EC. Not even when the Electoral Commissioner, in this case Charlotte Osei, started probing it. The committee further held that her action violated the Public Procurement Act, Section 40, and constituted a criminal offense under Section 92 of the same act. On the allegation of the missing contributions to the endowment fund, it was found that the contributions were wrongly applied as operational expense of the EC, and that the EC now has to refund the money. In other words, the committee is recommending that in addition, the money be refunded. Ms. Charlotte Osei gave evidence against Mrs. Opoku-Amankwah, referring to heightened staff agitation over their missing funds. The chairperson also gave evidence that she had undertaken an internal audit and also invited Iyoko to look into the matters of the commission. She failed to disclose the misapplication of the contributions when she was confronted by the then EC chairperson, Dr. Afarijan, and took no concrete steps to replace the funds, even years after they were misapplied. It was held that her actions and inactions had caused financial loss to the staff and probably to the EC as well. On the 2 allegations, the committee held that she had misconducted herself and showed gross incompetence within the meaning of Article 146 of the Constitution and recommended her removal as person of the EC. Now Charlotte Osei. The committee looked into 6 allegations against the chairperson. Without recourse to the commission, the services of lawyers, that is, sorry at law, without going through the procurement process as the law demands, and that there is no formal contractual arrangement between the commission and the law firm, and the basis for computing legal fees are known, involving fees of 400,000 Ghana cedis. The committee found that there was no documentary evidence of engagement of the appointment of sorry at law, which was in breach of the Public Procurement Act. The committee said that she appointed the lawyers through sole sourcing without the approval of the Public Procurement Authority, and that she misbehaved with the appointment of Messias sorry at law. It held further that, quote, the events surrounding the engagement of Messias sorry at law as lawyers for the Electoral Commission shows incompetence, ineptitude, and dereliction of duty on the part of Mrs. Charlotte Osei, and so we find, unquote. The second allegation was that the chairperson of the EC unilaterally abrogated a duly procured contract with the entity STL and awarded the same contract to the same entity without recourse to the commission and without due process of the Public Procurement Act. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know whether you get this point. The committee says that it found that Mrs. Charlotte Osei cancelled contracts awarded by Mrs. Opoku-Amankwah to STL. She cancelled these contracts and then turned round and awarded the same contracts. In other words, this time she then signed now with STL. The same contracts that you signed and the same terms and everything, you cancelled it, then turned round and re-awarded the same contracts to the same company without recourse to the law. The committee found that upon her appointment in June 2015, Mrs. Osei detected some irregularities with the STL contract, which was yet to be performed and was right to have abrogated it. However, the committee found that her decision to unilaterally award fresh contracts to the same STL in the aggregate sum of $22,340,814 was illegal. that she failed to comply with the internal procurement procedures of the Electoral Commission created by the Commission itself, namely the Entity Tender Review Panel and the Public Procurement Act. All in all, she awarded 12 contracts to STL for the supply of ICT equipment and services. And the committee found that out of these 12 contracts, only one did not exceed her procurement threshold as chairperson, which was 50,000 cedis for goods and services before July 2016. In other words, as a chairperson, there's a limit, there's an amount of money beyond which you cannot unilaterally award a contract. I hope I'm clear. In other words, beyond that amount, you must recourse to the Public Procurement Authority. And in all these contracts, they exceeded the threshold of the amount that was within her power to authorize. But she went ahead to authorize nonetheless. That's the point that we are making. Except one out of the 12. All the letters awarding the 12 contracts to STL were signed by the chairperson herself between 8 February 2016 and 25 November 2016. The committee held, quote, that it was very absurd coming from the chairperson, the very person who led the crusade to abrogate the initial STL contracts, citing breaches of the Public Procurement Act, unquote. The Entity Tender Review Panel consists of the chairperson and her 2 deputies. The committee found that the STL contracts awarded by the chairperson was unlawful, violated sections 16 and 40 of the Public Procurement Act, Act 914. The committee found that she misbehaved, and misbehavior is a quotation, that, quote, she misbehaved in awarding the new STL contracts. It further held that she, quote, showed sheer incompetence in the manner she handled or conducted the award of new STL contracts in view of her experience with the initial STL contracts which were abrogated at her instance, unquote. The third allegation is over the decision to acquire a new office block. The committee found that the chairperson breached the law on procurement in awarding contracts for works and consultancy service for the new building. The Public Procurement Authority in February 2016 granted approval for the EC to award the contract for consultancy service for partitioning the new offices at the current sum of 98,000 Ghana cedis, 98,100 Ghana cedis, as requested by the EC. Note that the Public Procurement Authority approved a contract sum of 98,100 Ghana cedis to the Commission for the partitioning of new offices. However, in April 2016, in April 2016, the chairperson wrote to the PPA for another restricted tender for internal partitioning of the new office block at a total cost of 3,410,268 Ghana cedis. This was also granted. The committee office block and the contract for consultant services were not put before the Entity Tender Committee as created by the Public Procurement Act and the EC's old internal procedures. The committee further held that the contracts awarded far exceeded the threshold legally allowable to her per the procurement laws.